Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Kirby, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where the film critic meets the Scream fan twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Before I go any further, I need to thank the producers and administrators of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. First, I need to thank TJ Jones, who does all of the graphic design work from the podcast. Also, I need to thank Ashley Summers, Mark Vieira, Sarah Campbell, and Sam Levy for helping me keep the podcast and Patreon community afloat. Thank you to everybody who subscribes to the Patreon at any and every tier. I'm an independent entity, so any bit of support that comes into the Patreon goes back into the podcast. Joining the Patreon gets you ad-free and early access to every episode, as well as the opportunity to join the community of the show. We have group chats across social media. In particular, Instagram is really the hub of the podcast community. More importantly, joining the Patreon is the vessel in which you would use to come onto the podcast, either in a one-on-one situation with me or a small panel. In addition, there's a guaranteed invite every month to a big group Zoom recording about a Scream topic. An exciting feature of the podcast is the audio commentary episodes. Every Scream fan knows what it was like listening to Wes Craven do the audio commentaries for the original trilogy and Scream 4, with Marianne Maddalena and Kevin Williamson and Patrick Lussier. And what I'm trying to do for my Patreon subscribers is I am going to be performing an audio commentary of a Scream or a Scream-related movie, one per month, every month. And my goal is to try to approach these as I'm doing deep analytical analysis about the characters, about the themes, about just general reaction. So it's something that I'm really proud of and I hope continues to be a cherished part of the podcast. So the commentary is available as a normal podcast episode for anybody to listen to like they would any other podcast, but it will also be available as a video watch along. So everybody, please go over to Patreon, subscribe to Scream with RCS. I would be eternally grateful. So I need to go through and thank everybody over at Patreon who is subscribed as a stab investor or a daddy/mama Ghostface. So the daddy/mama Ghostface of the Patreon are Carrie Tenney, Brett Janovich, Corey Wilson, and Stevie Shears. The stab investors include Allie, Amar Karim, Tamika Jones, David D., Garrison Nichols, Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Josh Calamari, Josh Carr, Scream Queens podcast, both Josh and Justine, The Horror Project podcast, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Quentin Harrison, and Sam Levy. Welcome to the summer finale of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. We are coming to you from a Sunday instead of a Tuesday and Friday. So this is the second Sunday episode we've had both this summer, which is very fun. But the interesting thing about this week's show is it is a birthday episode. Tomorrow, August 18th, will be my 30th birthday. This is the last episode you're going to get before a 2-week hiatus. Tuesday and Friday, we're going to be off. So 2 Tuesdays, 2 Fridays, no new episode of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. It's the first time we're really taking a prolonged break from the podcast. We've had a really busy summer, so we are taking a little bit of a summer vacation. So let's talk about this episode that you're about to hear. So this is going to be a nearly 2-hour episode this is an epic thing. So even though we're only coming to you once this week, you're still getting 2 episodes this week. So it's only like we're getting one week off in reality, but this week's episode is fun. So as everybody knows, I am the biggest Scream 3 fan in the world. It's like I've been in a relationship with Scream 3 since I was in 6th grade. I mean, I love this movie so much. It's, the reason I am here talking on a Scream podcast on episode 245. And to celebrate my birthday, my 30th birthday, I decided to recite 30 reasons why I think Scream 3 is the best, why it's my favorite, why it is underrated, why Scream 3 rules. I have 30 reasons for each year of my life. So we are just really bridging the Ryan Showers and Scream 3 marriage here. So first you'll hear 30 reasons why I think Scream 3 is the best and it's my favorite. Then you're going to hear me and my friends Josh and Justine commemorating 10 years since Wes Craven has passed, which, it's wild to think that it's been a whole decade since he's been gone from us. So we recorded a little tribute to him. So stay tuned. They're from the Scream Queens podcast. We love Josh and Justine. Then to round it out, since this was designed as like my 30th birthday episode, we are having a big celebration for Scream 3, 30 Reasons Why Scream 3 is the best. I decided that it would be only appropriate to do my favorite Taylor Swift song on my birthday for an occasion like this. So then you'll hear me and my friend Ashley discussing the song All Too Well, Taylor's version, 10-minute version. That is my favorite song, not only by Taylor Swift, but just song in general of all time. So we actually really go deep with that song. It's a longer segment, but please stick around. This is one of her most famous songs. I would argue that it is her masterpiece song. It's going to be the song that she's remembered for. So Ashley and I had a really nice time preparing for that episode and recording it. So stay tuned for that as well, for this kind of special occasion. So how can I celebrate my birthday any better than with Scream 3 and All Too Well, right? I also just want to get something off of my chest that I've been musing about for a couple of days now. So at the beginning of this month, it was announced that the show And Just Like That was canceled. And this, of course, is the sequel show to Sex and the City that happened after the two movies. So, I am a big Sex and the City fan. And how this relates to Scream, I'm getting there. Don't worry. But, so a lot of us have been with something like Scream since the 90s, since like Sex and the City since the 90s. And we've seen it go through different iterations, different chapters, different eras. And it's just crazy to me, because And Just Like That was canceled without much notice, without much warning to the creatives. And it was just like, poof, they were gone. So there's a 2-part finale. It will have just aired. I haven't seen it yet, but it's probably going to be the last time we see Sarah Jessica Parker as Carrie Bradshaw. And that to me just got me thinking about Scream, because anything can happen. Scream 7 could be it. It could be the last film where we see Sidney Prescott and Gale Weathers. It could be a flop. It could just not happen with the production, with the people involved. A million things could prevent it from coming to be. And it's actually a miracle that we are getting a Scream 7 in this way at this time so quickly with the talent involved. And it just really, losing And Just Like That and Sex and the City and Carrie Bradshaw, it really shook me to my core. I was actually very upset because you've gone through, 6 seasons of the first show, 2 movies, and now 3 seasons of a new show. That's a long time to know 3 characters and go through, different phases of life with them and have them there as comfort characters and to grow with them. And in a similar way, we've done the same thing with Scream over the original trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, then Scream 4, and then 5 and 6, and now with Scream 7. And it just made me realize just how precious these things are in life. Things like long-running franchises for movie fans, for Scream fans, for Sex and the City fans. And it just made me really reflect hey, we need to be more cognizant of the fact that we have this today, we may not have it tomorrow. We have Scream 7, we may not have a Scream 8. So we need to live and think about these things like it's the last time that we have them. And, appreciate every second of every experience, So before we get the trailer, I know everyone's chomping at the bit to see Scream 7, to see images, to see footage, but, enjoy this time. Enjoy not knowing anything, because once you see a trailer, that time is over. And then enjoy the trailer time, being excited for the movie, because once the movie comes out, that time is over. And then the movie comes out, we need to enjoy the release and going to the theater and commiserating about it on the podcast and talking about it. We need to enjoy every step of the journey, because Scream 8 is not guaranteed. Scream 9 is not guaranteed, despite how I talk sometimes on the show. It's a real reality check. Oh my gosh, if And Just Like That can be yanked, the show that made HBO what it is today, the OG, if that can just be yanked and thrown away, so can Scream. And especially, it's just wild to me. I'm saying this and I'm talking about it in such an emotional way, and yet there are people out there who are advocating for the destruction of Scream because of their own personal whatever, but I don't think most rational, reasonable people want Scream to end. And I don't either. And it's just, losing Sex and the City, it was a huge shock to me. In fact, I called a Mark him and I said to him, he doesn't watch Sex and the City. Never has, never will. but I was just so upset. I was so down. It kind of ruined my day. Like it happened, we got the announcement like around noon, and for the rest of the workday, I was just in a slump. I was so sad, and it just was such a wake up call. Like, I mean, these movies and these timelines are precious. Like the fact that we have a Scream 7 is so precious, and we should embrace every second of it and appreciate every second of it. So that's all I have to say here. But just, a word to the wise. We all may not be here after this in terms of Scream 7. This could be the last Scream movie, at least with Nev and Courtney. You never know. You never know what something like Scream 4 is going to dish us. So I just enjoy every second of Scream 7. And from my Sex and the City heart to all of us, time with our favorite characters and our favorite franchises is precious. And, who knows what the next year, 5 years, 10 years hold. And just as a warm-up, I am going to be joined here by my friend Amar Karim, just for old time's sake, to run through my Scream with Ryan C. Showers speed round questions. So let's kick it over there. Okay, so Sydney, Gail, or Ty?
Sydney.
Yeah. I'm a Ty, bitch. How dare you? I'm just teasing.
No, listen, I understand why you'd be a tie, but I've scrutinized this, and based on all the characters as well through these 6 films, she's just, for me, she's just slightly better than Gail in almost everything. And that's really ironic because Courtney Cox is my absolute, favorite of everything, but as a character, it's got to be Sydney.
Okay. Sam or Tara?
Sam.
Yeah, I'm also a Sam. You know what's funny is people, and there are so many instances of speedrun questions I've done since I put these in over the last year of people saying, can I say neither? And they're saying it genuinely. They're not being shady. I'm just like, wow, but I am a Sam.
I think that's harsh, to be honest. I really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Sam's better.
Dewey or Chad?
Dewey.
Yeah, I agree.
Dewey, definitely. I mean, Chad grew on me in Scream 6, but definitely Dewey.
Well, Chad can definitely grow on me. I'm just teasing. Favorite movie buff? I know you're going to say Noah from Scream the TV series.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, let's go with him. No, I'm going to have to stick with Randy. Yeah.
I'm going with Cece just because it's something fresh and fun. And I also like Kirby, but really Cece.
Okay, I get it. Why?
It's the Sarah Michelle Gellar effect. It's the fact that she is ballsy and bold in that film class. And with Kirby, I think she's cool and stuff. But with Cece, she's kind of I don't know. She just has a nerve about her and a confidence that I love, and spunk. I love a girl who stays home and eats pizza and watches movies and talks to her friends on the phone, because that's who I am.
Yeah,
so
excellent.
I actually have a little a deep down a little thing I wish Cece would have survived Scream 2 and been kind of worked on Stab 3 as a writer or something, and then got killed in Scream 3 instead of Scream 2. All right, basic bitch. Favorite killer?
Gonna have to just stick. Oh, you see, okay. Can I give 2 answers here? Billy is my favorite killer for the sake of how intense he is, but for motive reasons, I have to go with Jill.
Wait, say that again?
So for the reason of the motive, it's Jill Roberts.
My God.
No, because, back in 2011 when we saw that, it was oh, okay, this is interesting. But that is so relevant if you look at the generation of today and social media and how people think that they've got their fame from social media. She was so ahead of her time. And I just think that, obviously she's a crazy cow, but her motive is the best in my opinion.
Yeah. No. Okay. Good. I love that. I didn't know that because I thought you would say Mickey was your second. So I love this. We love Jill being your number 2.
Yeah.
For me, it's easily Roman. So favorite opening and favorite finale.
What?
I'm just.
Excuse me.
What?
You just called me a basic bitch and you went with Roman without giving any reason. Excuse me. Come on. I need a bit more than that.
Brother, he's Sydney's brother. He's the most organized. He has the deepest motive, the most realistic, painful motive. His relationship and his dynamic with Sydney in the finale is by far the most intimate of the franchise so far. It's gonna be really tough for me, if Anna Camp is the killer in Scream 7, which I hope she is. She has big shoes to fill. So, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I love that you said Jill for yours though, because I don't remember you ever being a Jill stan.
This
is cool.
So grown on me. The more I see Scream 4, the more I think this is genius. This whole setup that she did. Yeah, it's crazy. Of course, she's a psycho, but it makes so much sense. All
right. So I'm going to speak for both of us here.
Yeah.
For the favorite opening and favorite finale. I'm going to say our favorite opening is Scream 1 and our favorite finale is Scream 3. Do we have an issue, Amar?
Not at all. That is absolutely correct.
All right. So I'm going to speak for you and myself again, just because I know you. This is how well I know you over our deep friendship. So number 8, favorite scene. You would obviously pick Gail Weathers in the sound booth, and I'm obviously going to pick Sydney and Roman. So
That is correct again. Yes.
yeah. Here's something I don't know. Favorite kill/death of the franchise?
Yeah, Olivia Morris.
Okay.
Because it's the only death to this day in the entire franchise that makes me wince. It's that brutal, you know. Poor girl, she literally is just battered around that room, stabbed in every single way, and then repeatedly stabbed and thrown through a window. It's just, it's intense.
Okay. Favorite supporting role?
Jennifer Jolie.
Jennifer Jolie, and another person you've grown on. There's so much Scream 3 in your answers.
There
here.
is, yeah, and the reason I picked these characters is because I never liked them in the first place, and then they just grew on me, and I started appreciating them more and more.
Okay, folks, let's do it. So 30 reasons why Scream 3 is my favorite. And just as a reminder, I didn't just pick this number randomly. This is my 30th birthday. So my friend Jake, my friend TikTok Jake, he actually did something similar for his 27th birthday, where he did this with Scream 2. So he did 27 reasons why Scream 2 is his favorite. So I am kind of stealing that from him. So thank you, Jake. Let's do it now. So, okay. All right, 30 reasons why Scream 3 is my favorite, the best, underrated, the gem of the franchise, whatever. 30 reasons why you should appreciate Scream 3 more. 30 reasons why you should look back into Scream 3 if you didn't like it before, if it's lower on your ranking. 30 reasons why you should rank it higher. Let's go. Okay, so first up is Sidney Prescott's character arc and Neve Campbell's performance. Oh my God, my entire podcast is built around this bullet point, and there's no other place that you can really begin or end when it doesn't relate to Sidney Prescott as it is for Scream 3. Now, some people may look at this, some people who don't know as much about Scream 3 or know the reality of Scream 3, some people, I'll tell you where this all started, where my obsession with Scream 3 began. It was me loving Scream 3 and people kind of demeaning Scream 3 by saying, oh, well, Sydney's not even a main character in it. And she doesn't have enough screen time, or she has less screen time than Gail and Dewey. And I have completely turned that on its head. It's completely false. Sydney has more screen time than Gail and Dewey. She is the lead. She is missing in action for a good 20 minutes minus one scene, at the end of Act 1, beginning of Act 2, whatever. She has the best scene in that segment of the film, so STFU. But no, Neve Campbell has 33 minutes of screen time in Scream 3. That's just a few hairs away from her Scream 2 screen time, where she had 37 minutes. And it's more screen time than Scream 4. So one thing that really bothered me back in the day was whenever Scream 4 was coming out, everyone would say, oh, well, this is our time to actually have a real Sydney story, since Scream 3 didn't give us that. I can't imagine saying that to me. Ryan of 2025 looks back at that, and I'm just horrified by that sentiment that's saying, oh, well, we need a real Sydney story because Scream 3 wasn't it. Did you watch Scream 3? But no, so Sydney only has 27 minutes of screen time in Scream 4 compared to Scream 3, where she has 33. She has those of anybody in the cast. Courtney Cox only has 28 minutes. David Arquette has 26. So, and despite the screen time, there's screen time and then there's presence in the film. Sydney, every scene that Sydney's not in is about her. The mystery is about her and her mother, how it relates to her, where she is, the killer trying to get to her, the killer framing her. It's all about Sydney in Scream 3. So, on the substance, on the content, she's in the air when she's not on the physical screen. So buzz off to that. But so that's where it started, folks. But, going through Scream 3 over the years, if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard my spiel. You've heard how impressive Sydney's character arc is in this movie. She's wrestling with a lot of things from the first two movies, especially where Scream 2 leaves her. It forces her into hiding. And the whole point of her character arc in this is to find peace from everything that happened before. So, she thinks that hiding away in the woods by herself protects her, protects everybody else around her, protects other innocent people. And what she learns is that that's not the case, and that she has to confront her fears and find the courage to come face to face with something and make that active agency decision to be like, yes, I'm choosing to confront my trauma and confront my fears. And that's how she kind of works through the trauma. But also, it's twofold. Part of Sydney in Scream 3, she's just agonizing about her mother's past. She's stewing about it. She's so uncomfortable with not knowing the truth about her mother. And she just feels like there's all these secrets that she doesn't really know who she is and why her mother's actions caused this ripple effect of the Ghostface killing sprees in Woodsboro and Windsor College. So part of Sydney's journey in Scream 3 is, all of those questions about her mother and her trauma from the Woodsboro and Windsor College murders, coming face to face with learning who her mother is and like the root of what happened to her mom back in the 70s, back before Woodsboro and before she was killed. And through all of that, she finds peace. And that's beautiful. And, along with that, it's kind of twofold. Number one, so not only is it Sidney Prescott's character arc, but it's Neve Campbell's performance. It's soulful, it's genuine. Every look is worth 1,000 words. It's the most dramatic performance that Neve has ever given, yet it's so internalized. That's the beauty of her performance here, is like she could go for the big theatrics, and she does have her moments, but they're all internalized. Everything is told through her eyes, through her expression, through her body language. It's such a beautiful performance. I think it's the best final girl performance ever in a horror movie. And here's the important thing about Sidney in Scream 3. Not a moment is wasted. Every single scene that she has is about her character development, and it all goes back to the prism of either her trauma, her mother, or, this inner struggle that she's having about going out into the world and removing herself from safety and putting herself in harm's way to confront her fears. So every single scene goes back to Maureen Prescott. Every scene goes back to Sidney's trauma from Windsor, Woodsboro. So that's the magic of Sidney in Scream 3. It's so focused. I'm so proud that every single scene kind of goes back to the thesis statement, which you can't say for most heroines in horror films. There are random scenes, and Sidney in Scream 3 is extremely focused. So there you have it, folks. Okay, number 2, Maureen Prescott's backstory and the trilogy bow and the noir aspects of the photographs. And by noir, I mean film noir. It's that old school Hollywood mystery type of storytelling that used to be really prevalent like in the 1940s and such. I love Maureen Prescott so much. I find her so fascinating as a character, even though we've never even really got to meet her. We only have seen her through the subconscious of Sidney, right? But I think like the thing that I most love about Scream 3 besides Sidney is the fact that Maureen Prescott is like invading this whole movie. Like it's so cool because, her backstory in Scream 1 was lighter. It was a light subplot, and then it comes full circle in the finale, be like, oh my God, it was right in front of us the whole time. Here, I think having Maureen's backstory be kind of driving the movie in a lot of respects and being directly relevant to what's happening with Stab 3 makes the movie so rich. Like how the photographs are being dropped and being curious about what happened to her at this time in her life. It's so the fertile ground there for storytelling is so magical, and it's like it's the reason why I think Scream 3 is able to live on. So okay, so I'm going to go straight from number 2 to number 3, which is the complex screenplay. One thing that kind of irks me is when people say that Scream 3 is badly written. Clearly, like, you don't know what you don't know. And I get, like, there is a criticism about Scream 3 and perhaps the comedy or perhaps how you perceive the comedy. But that's, in terms of the writing, people say, oh, well, Scream 3 is badly written because of this, because of the jokes, because of the Stab 3 of it all, because of this kill or whatever. I think that's really dumb to look at writing that way. The screenplay of Scream 3 is kind of a miracle. It's so amazing. The dense content that it juggles. So not only does it juggle the character arcs of the original 3, from Scream 1 to 2 to 3, you have Sidney Gale and Dewey juggling that, specifically Sidney, who kind of has a storyline to herself. It also juggles the Stab 3 slasher storyline with just the killer killing the cast of Stab 3. And then you have Maureen Prescott's backstory. And you have Sidney, Stab 3, and Maureen's backstory, 3 different storylines, all interconnected in this film. And it crescendos into the finale where all 3 are kind of equally important and equally relevant. It's so cool. So in addition to that, with the screenplay, you have the culture of Hollywood. You have commentary about Me Too 17 years before it would actually be exposed in the real world. And so many different suspects. You have the mystery of what happened to Maureen Prescott and the mystery of who is the killer now, and kind of not knowing how they're related and going on that journey of discovering how they're related. It's actually well proportioned throughout the movie in terms of when we learn information and how it grows. So, and frankly, I do find the criticism of the comedy to be over the top. Like, I think that possibly it's coming from Scream 1 and 2, where you had Kevin Williamson dialogue, and he was so clever and had such a specific Kevin Williamson-ism about him that going from that to Scream 3, it's a bit jarring. But then when you look at Scream 3 compared to 4 and 5 and 6, I don't think it is so jarring. I think Scream 3 is actually one of the more clever when it comes to the dialogue, even if it's not Kevin Williamson dialogue. It's Wes Craven and Aaron Kruger dialogue, and it's still equally fun. So it doesn't matter. Okay, so the complex screenplay, number 3. All right, number 4, Wes Craven's adrenaline-filled direction. I know that whenever we're talking about Wes Craven's directing, I know that Scream 2 is the correct answer. Like, we should pick Scream 2 as the best directed Scream film because of the set pieces, because of what he's able to do with suspense. But I actually take the view that his best work is actually in Scream 3 because he has to juggle all the different tones. He has to juggle the denseness of the screenplay, of the different storylines, make it all work, and juggling comedy with action, with drama, with sadness, and horror and suspense. Like, there is a lot in Scream 3 that Wes Craven strikes the perfect balance in his direction. And Wes had a really hard job, which was to make a horror movie at a time when it was not socially favored to do so because of the Columbine attack. And within that, Wes Craven still found a way to make Scream 3 exciting and suspenseful and scary in a thriller way, and I say adrenaline-filled direction because every time I watch Scream 3, and I've seen Scream 3 at least 700 times, I still get a burst of adrenaline. It's still so exciting. The way that Wes works with the other technical aspects, like the editing, to make the movie so thrilling to watch. But in addition to that, you have like the big, huge, epic locations, and it has a really great pace. It's such an emotional film, and that's due to Wes and what he did as a director, and the mise en scène. And talk about the mise en scène. Like, so, you want to, if there are filmmakers out there who want to make a scary movie without using blood, watch Scream 3 because of the way that Wes uses different lighting and shadows and different ways of capturing a frame in the mise en scène. Like, for instance, like think about like Christine's feet, the way that Wes focuses on her feet as she's walking to turn off the music, or the knife marks on the door of Cotton and Christine at the beginning. The way that Wes Craven films Ghostface in the passageway as he's kind of hunting Jennifer Jolie, it's so scary. So, or here's an interesting creative thing that Wes does. Gail and Dewey in the same shot of Gail getting jumped in Milton's house while Dewey is looking for Tyson. They're in the same frame, feet away from each other. It's so scary. So Wes Craven kept it all together despite the tone going in so many different directions. Okay, next up, number 5. An underrated thing about Scream 3 that I will go to my grave discussing and talking about, which is how adult the movie is. Not only is this a movie where there are no teenagers, it's literally all just grown-up people, people besides Sydney's the youngest person and she, late 20s, but otherwise everyone is a grown-up. They're adults, they're working professionals. And so with that, we get very adult scenes. We get scenes with no violence where two characters are just talking about their pasts and their emotions and what they're feeling and how they're moving forward and how they're navigating this chapter of their lives. And to me, that is one of the most beautiful, mature things the franchise has ever done. And no other film has captured it in the same way that Scream 3 has, not even Scream 1 and 2. So, I'm just going to give you some examples. Sydney and Neil talking about, do you ever think about her, in the kitchen? Sydney and Kincaid, one of my favorite scenes of all time, talking about each of themselves and their past in the station. Gail and Dewey talking about their failed relationship and the fact that like Woodsboro got this weird call in the coffee shop in the middle of the movie after Sarah Darling dies. Even you could say this about Sydney and Angelina, and the way that they connect and how emotional and sad and grown up that scene is. So, it's just interesting to take characters outside of a horror scene and just learn about them, having them bounce off each other. Like, that is the beauty of some of these scenes in Scream 3. So many wonderful examples, but so when people say, oh, Scream 3 is easily the worst, is it really though? Is it when you have scenes like this? Just asking. Okay. Next up, number 6 is Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers. So, again, going back to like the early days, Courtney Cox used to get beaten up for her performance in Scream 3 as that it was too much like Monica Geller. And now looking back, it just seems like such a stupid criticism. I actually think that she is a very nuanced backbone of the movie. You have Parker Posey over here doing a lot of the comedy. You have Neve Campbell doing a lot of the drama, and Courtney Cox kind of keeps the ship floating with the Maureen Prescott backstory. And I don't think that Courtney Cox is a very attention-seeking in this role. She's just going with the flow and like keeping the movie afloat, which I really, really respect. And a lot of Courtney's strength as an actor goes unnoticed because she's not drawing attention to herself. And even Gail's character development, I think, goes undernoticed, if that makes sense, unnoticed. We see and learn about Gail. We kind of go a bit deeper with her. For instance, like her standing up to Milton, we actually get to see that in action. We get to hear people talking about Gail whenever she's not present, at the window, or we see her reacting to Jennifer in certain ways. And I think that's so good and really good character development. And it's probably the most screen time Gail Weathers will ever have in a Scream movie. Okay, number 7, the most realized Dewey Riley and David Arquette's leading man energy. Scream 3 is my favorite Dewey. I think that it most feels like a human being that David's playing. Sometimes in Scream 1, in Scream 2, he's not fully there yet. He's really good in Scream 2. But for me, I think that Dewey really comes into his own here. And having the extra screen time allows him to be a real presence, a real character that isn't a comedic beat. He feels like he's grounded, that both Sydney and Gail depend on him emotionally, and just sentimentally, and that he holds the group together. And he's kind of the leading energy of like the Stab 3 storyline in a way. So we love Dewey, and I think that David has actually some really nice moments of acting that are underrated, both the comedy but also the drama, like the sweetness with Nev in particular. So, okay, number 8. Mark Kincaid. So this is a weird thing to be discussing now that Patrick Dempsey isn't going to be in Scream 7. I really wanted this to work out. I mean, if you go back and listen to this podcast, I was probably beating the drum of Patrick Dempsey being the Mark that's referenced in Scream 5. I'm sad that it didn't work out. And like, since it has been announced that Sydney is married to Mark Evans, played by Joel McHale, and then it's not Patrick Dempsey, I haven't really talked about him much because it's just hard to. But I love Mark Kincaid. I think he is such an interesting character. Like, he's the type of character, the quality of character, the caliber of character that we should be shooting for in our supporting roles. He brings a lot of subtlety to his performance. Whenever Sydney is not there in Act 1, Kincaid is there, and he brings that serious tone that she would otherwise bring. That's underrated. It's a very mature character. So there's a lot of depth to what Patrick Dempsey is doing here. And, he can be many different things, which is what you want in a Scream character. You want him to be a suspect. You want him to be a potential love interest. You want him to be a hero, but also someone who is really suspicious. So there's a lot of roles that Patrick Dempsey fills in just this one character. He has a backstory. The scene with Sydney and Kincaid at the station, we get a real sense of who this guy is without him, going beat by beat. Yeah, well, I grew up in Salt Lake City, and I did this, and I went to high school here. No, we learn about the darkness in his past and how he makes decisions and like how he lives with himself. That is beautiful character development. So, amazing character, for being just a supporting role in one movie. So long live Mark Kincaid. Okay, number 9. Now, this is one that most everybody would jump up and down saying, and that is Parker Posey as Jennifer Jolie and just the general Gail and Jennifer dynamic in Scream 3. It's comedy gold, but in terms of like the chemistry between them and Gail, seeing how she was back then, right? And seeing a different version of herself. That's great. But just as a presence, Parker Posey is probably the most unique presence in the franchise. She's unhinged, she's eccentric, she makes really creative decisions as an actor. She's so memorable. So by the time that she dies, there's a real sense of loss. And it's hard to say that about some characters in the later films, but when she dies, it's just like, wow, this was wow. But, Parker Posey, every decision she makes is not the obvious one. It's a really creative performance. It's legendary. So thank you, Parker Posey. And she does get her due in pop culture because she's so camp, as people say. I don't even know if camp is the right word because it's just such a left field character and take on Hollywood actress that makes it so iconic. Okay, number 10, I want to talk about the underrated aspect of the mystery and the red herrings. I think a lot of people say that Scream kind of got worse as it pertains to the suspects as the movies went on, and that it felt more forced. And once you kind of know the formula and you know that these characters aren't going to die and that these people are the only potential suspects, that it became more formulaic. However, I actually think that Scream 3 has one of the better mysteries and the better roster of suspects, probably since the original. The original probably has the best suspects, but I think that Scream 3 would be even higher than Scream 2 in some respect. The key to having good suspects and a red herring and a mystery of like, is it this person, that person? It's not to push it into the face of the viewer like Scream 5 tries to do and make it so obvious and calculated. And Scream 2 and 4, they have so many characters that sometimes you get lost in the weeds with them. In Scream 6, you have all survivors just interacting, who cares? And Scream 3 is in a sweet spot where the characters that are suspects, they are memorable. We know who they are. there's a potential list, right? And there are some curveballs. So the people I have identified as the suspects here would have been Kincaid, Angelina, Roman, and Milton. And I think each of them, the audience would have been suspicious of in a genuine way. I mean, Milton is kind of built up as the red herring suspect in Act 3 after we learn the Weinstein of it all, of his past with Maureen Prescott. Once that's introduced in the fact that it's taking place at his house, he is made to be the suspect, right? By everybody, which is really cool. But you have Angelina, who has the obvious moments like in the bathroom and, whatever else, and playing Sidney Prescott and having that weird envy of her, and then Kincaid, that's built in, every time, for instance, like the Stab 3 set, he enters right after things kind of calm down, right? He's very suspicious when he's holding the gun at Sidney at the end, and Roman, he pulls the Billy Loomis of it all, right? He goes himself on the phone with Sarah, frames himself so that he's taken out of the running for suspects, and he fakes his death. So, there's a lot here that's really, really good mystery and really good red herrings that I think people need to appreciate more. So, I think that the problem with the Scream 2 of it all is like you have Derek, but then like the rest of the characters are so small that you kind of forget who they are and, whether they can really be memorable as red herrings, if that makes sense. So, okay. Next up is the depth of Roman's motive and the power of Scott Foley's performance. Roman's my favorite killer. I think he is the GOAT for me. I think that Jill is probably objectively the best killer in the franchise from Scream 4. But Roman for me is my favorite, because he is the most intelligent. He has the biggest plan. He has like the fitness to really carry out on these attacks. He worked by himself. There's so many interesting and compelling things about him, and like, but specifically, and like he is played to perfection by Scott Foley. I think Scott Foley was the perfect choice. He looks like Nev. He feels like a Scream killer. It feels like it should end with him. Whenever Scott Foley delivers that monologue at the end, it feels epic. It feels the way it's supposed to feel whenever things are at the end, whenever it's the ending of something. There's that. But in terms of his motive, I know that some people may just think, oh, it's the brother and that's it. No, it's so much deeper than that. It's not just that he wants revenge on his sister. I want to tell you, let's go deep, okay? It's not only the fact that Maureen chose Sidney over Roman, or at least that's how he sees it. It's the fact that he feels like Sidney, not only did she get the family, she got the family that he never had. She had the mom that he never did. So there's that. But also, he kind of triggered these events into place, thinking, he would feel some satisfaction from the death of Maureen. And it didn't work, by courting Billy and Stu to kill her, right? It kind of backfired. And Sidney, who had the life that he was supposed to have, right? She became famous from this. She became the victim. She became the star. She became the precious Sidney Prescott. And Roman, he isn't famous. He doesn't have the fame. He doesn't have the love from the world. He's still struggling as a director to really make the movies that he wants to make. He doesn't want to be making Stab 3. He wants to be making a drama. So that's interesting. But how I see the motive is, he not only wants to kill Sidney, he wants the fame of what Sidney has in a different way than Jill. Jill wants it for in a very vapid influencer type of a way. Roman, he feels like Sidney has something and he wants to take that from her. He wants to make her suffer. He wants to make her look bad. He wants to be seen as the hero and make her out to be the villain. That's part of his plan, right? Is to make her into the crazy lady who snapped and set her up and kind of destroy her reputation and claim that reputation for himself, that he's the hero. He is the one at the end of the line that gets to call himself the last man standing, the person who ended this all. It's not just that he hates Sidney and he wants to kill her. It's that he wants to take something away from her that he feels she did to him, which was the childhood, the mother, everything. So, and I actually love the framing of Sidney. I think that's actually, if you look at it just as the trilogy and that's it, that's a really cool way to do it. I think it gets taken too far in Scream 5 and 6 because then Sam's proclivities to be a killer, they feel kind of old news after Roman did this with Sidney. But framing Sidney to be the killer, I think, is very dark and sinister and sad. And it makes sense. I like it. I like it a lot. So Roman was just a very smart guy in terms of how he planned out who he was going to kill, when he was going to kill, when he was going to strike, how he was going to do this. Love him. So, okay, next let's talk about the opening. So killing Cotton in the opening. So it's a very cool thing to do, to kill a surviving character in the opening scene. Not only that, but the person who was the hero of Scream 2. He saved Sidney in Scream 2. Sidney passed him the mic at the end of Scream 2. And what does Scream 3 do? They take that guy and they kill him. That is so ballsy. And the fact that we switch up and we have the main person in the opening is a man as opposed to a woman. That's very interesting, right? And the fact that Cotton is so tied to Maureen Prescott, to the origin of her, and we're about to see the story of Maureen Prescott's origin story. Like, that also makes so much sense. It's so smart. So yeah. And like, something that Wes Craven does a lot in Scream 3 is he shows, doesn't tell. We learn so much about Cotton's success and his journey from Scream 2 to here. And there's a lot of commentary even in that. Like, some of the commentary in Scream 3 is so smart. Like, the opening shows Cotton after he was just wrestling through the city to get home, and he was driving like a maniac and a bat out of hell. We come home to him, and he's on the TV as a media figure lecturing about how you need to drive safely. And like, that's kind of the point of Scream 3. That's the message of Scream 3. And I'll get to that later. But like, so things like that inform the mosaic of Scream 3, which is great. So it's a perfect place to start with killing Cotton because it's immediately going to bring Sydney back into the fold. And it's all centered around Sydney. The phone call is about Sydney. And then at the end, we get you should have told me who Sydney was. We love how focused Scream 3 is around Maureen Prescott and Sydney Prescott. Oh my God. So, okay. Next up, I alluded to this whenever I was talking about Wes Craven's directing, and that is Patrick Lucier's editing. I love this. So I come from film critic world where we look at all of the different aspects of filmmaking, where cinematography, sound design, production, costumes, and editing. And I particularly love to watch editing in action. And Patrick Lussier, he did an amazing job with all three of these first movies. But Scream 3 by far, I think, is his masterpiece. He gives us really quick cuts that is great for suspense, and he allows us to focus on like the characters' faces and the way that like the frames he chooses that puts the character kind of in an intimate place with us. And in addition, he balances that with really amazing establishing shots. So we get a lot of epicness. It feels like a real movie. But a lot of like the magic of Scream 3 comes from the editing. Like the fight with Sydney and Roman, that's all editing. I mean, that is the editing in that sequence is so spectacular. It's exciting. It's where the adrenaline comes from, where I talked about with Wes Craven's directing. So next up is Marco Beltrami's score. Like Patrick Lussier, I think Marco Beltrami only got better with his music as we went through the trilogy. And like, he had way more instruments in this than he did in the other films. I think that the score around Sydney in particular is beautiful. Every single time Sydney's music plays, or there's or there's a scene where it's really intense new music, it's just so special, and it just helps me define what the original trilogy was going for and how sad this this story actually is, despite some of the comedy that may be going out in the movie that people really notice. So yeah, in particular, Sid wears a dress at the end. So beautiful, epic, the way that the music swells. It's gorgeous. So, okay, number 15, the production value. Like, I think Scream 3 had so much confidence and so much swagger and suave because of how much money it had to really create this production. It feels like a real Hollywood movie, in terms of the warm colors, the saturated colors. The sets are so ornate, the mansion that they use, the set at Sydney's house, the stab 3 of it all. There's so much money that went into the actual sets and the production. It feels like a real life movie that they really invested in. So the production is amazing. So, okay, next up is number 16 is the cast ensemble with the heavyweights. One time I read an article from somebody criticizing Scream 3 that it didn't have any cast members that popped off, that went on to have great careers, which I think is so stupid and kind of outdated. Think about Parker Posey, an Emmy nominee for The White Lotus. Patrick Dempsey, who was on Grey's Anatomy for 20 years and is one of the most recognizable leading men out there. Emily Mortimer, who's an indie darling. She's worked on Oscar-nominated films like Give Me a Break. Lance Henriksen, who was a legend before Scream, but whatever. So, but you get my point. Scream 3 has a really cool cast ensemble. Again, it's all adult. Number 17 is the proportionality of the trio in Scream 3 and just the trio becoming the trio. So, the trio, they really are equal leads in Scream 3. In Scream 1, it was solely Sydney. Gale and Dewey were supporting characters. In Scream 2, I think you can argue that Sydney and Gale are almost co-leads, and then you have Dewey as supporting. In Scream 3, they are all equally important. They all have something to do. Sydney has her storyline, Gale has the Maureen Prescott storyline, and Dewey has the love triangle with Gale and Jennifer, but also the Stab 3 cast. So there's a lot going on in Scream 3, and they all get their moment to shine. and their moment of closure. Gail gets to solve the Maureen Prescott story and kind of put this to rest, this part of her career to rest. And she gets to have a big character arc and change from the original film to here. Sydney, again, big character arc from the first film to here. Dewey, even big character arc from the first film to here, and where we end up. But, so each of them really gets a big moment, but also we spend a lot of time with all three of them, and they all just feel like these big epic kind of dragons, like Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty after she becomes a dragon. And that's how I see all three of them. And they're all equal. It's not that like one's more important than the other. And so a good example of this is Scream 4, where Dewey really is cast aside, whereas Sydney and Gail both feel like they do kind of here. And but here it's kind of a perfect proportion of Sydney, Gail, and Dewey all feeling equal and important. And they've earned it in terms of Gail and Dewey being next to Sydney, in terms of surviving. Like, this is how you naturally build a friend group, unlike what Scream 6 did, which was just force, oh, look, we have survivors. Wouldn't this be cute if we give them a nickname? Haha. Like, they actually have grown individually, together as twosomes, and then become, unite as a trio. So that's what's beautiful about that. So, and they each get a part of the movie that is focused on them. Like, so, in the beginning, it's really well balanced between the first scene we see Sydney, the next scene we see Gail, the next scene we see Sydney, the next scene we see Gail. Then, Gail kind of gets the end of Act 1, beginning of Act 2. Sydney gets like the majority of Act 2. And then, Gail and Dewey get their finale at the house. Then Sydney gets to have her finale at the house. It's very well done in terms of giving the characters what they need to really come to a close at the end of this movie. So, okay, the introductions of Sydney and Gail. I'm going to go very specific here with the specific scenes. So, Sydney Prescott's scene in Scream 3, where we first meet her, again, there's very little dialogue. It's just Neve Campbell and Wes Craven and all of the people who worked on the technical aspects, giving us a clue into Sydney's life, showing us what her life is, as opposed to telling us, oh yeah, I am married and I have this and I have that. No, what we see is her walking her dog, locking her gate up, locking her front door, seeing that she lives in a remote area, seeing that she works from home. All these things provide us details and richness to Sydney's life that help us understand who this woman is. So that's great. And then, take Gail Weathers, her opening scene, asking, tell me, Miss Weathers, was it worth it? We see that she's a powerful person, that she's different from the last time we saw her. She's grown in stature and celebrity, but she's still, but she's being asked a question about the consequences of all of her career decisions, which she kind of comes to reckon with by the end of the movie. So it's really, really nice stuff. Okay, so next up, number 19, I have the nightmare sequence. This, of course, is when Sydney is sleeping and she dreams of her mother at the window, kind of talking to her and then scratching the window, and then Ghostface appears. Maureen kind of turns into Ghostface. I've always loved this scene, and this scene back in the day used to get a lot of hate as being not a Scream scene, not feeling like a Scream movie, which is dumb because it's featuring Sydney Prescott and it's about her mother. I don't know how you can get more Scream than Sydney and Maureen, but whatever. So, the metaphor of this, of Maureen turning into Ghostface at the end, and the fact that that's kind of deep, right? Thinking about Sydney's character development, like Sydney, she can't think about her mother without the added tie of Ghostface, and that Maureen's death led to Ghostface. So whenever she thinks about mom, she thinks about Ghostface. Brilliant. But also the fact that she would be dreaming about her mom, these things that Maureen is saying, leading into questions of Sydney, like, am I like her? Am I like this? Why don't I understand her? You're just like me. You're just like me. That's so chilling, So, and you have Neve Campbell's brilliant performance here. Again, all in the eyes, just so sad and devastating. And there's kind of a nice Nightmare on Elm Street connection here because Wes Craven, of course, made those movies before he made Scream. So you have a nightmare aspect to Scream, which is part of like something fresh and new. It's so ironic to me, right? Today, people are like, oh, we need to keep things fresh. We need to do new things. So Scream 3 tried to do new things by giving us a nightmare scene, and everyone yelled and said, oh, this doesn't feel like Scream. Give me a fucking break. And honestly, this nightmare scene is 10 times better than any of the Billy Loomis shit that we saw in Scream 5 and 6. Okay, next up is the meta of it all, the stab of it all. I love Stab 3. I love the concept of Stab 3, that the fact that they're making Stab 3, they're commenting on their experience of making Scream 1, 2, and 3 through the production of Stab 3. It's so cool. And like the idea of like killing members of the cast in real time. That's really cool. But then you get to even up the ante with something like Sydney's chase through the Stab 3 set, where you get to recreate the original chase scene, the original vibe, the original moment, the emotions that come with that. It's nostalgic, it's reflective, but without being annoying. It's not, the Easter egging of it all that Scream 5 tried to do. It feels real, it feels grounded, it feels like we are dealing with the wounds of Sidney Prescott. And like also we get to see something new. We have only heard about Maureen's murder. We've never gotten to see like the actual setup. We get to see the bedroom and the body bag, and it's all done in a very creepy and an innovative way. In addition to just furthering the development of Sydney, going deeper and deeper and deeper with her character arc and her characterization and understanding her emotions. Like that's brilliant. So, and speaking of doing something different, in the words of Ghostface, allegedly in Scream 6, we have the voice changer mixing up the formula. And like, I love the voice changer. There are people who think that, oh, it's so unrealistic, that it's this, that it's that. I don't know. For me, I've always been able to suspend a little bit of disbelief in terms of Scream, in terms of anything, really. But also, the original voice changer wouldn't have been so flawless, right? So I think to say that, like, this is unrealistic because it recreates these voices, like, oh, give me a break, just go with it. So, the voice changer, it really does mix up the formula. Like, we've been led to believe, like, this is going to happen, that we're going to get calls and it's going to be from the killer, and he's going to sound a certain way. And what Scream 3 does is it tricks us into thinking, no, they're on the phone with the people we already know. That kind of deception and purpose and mind control is really smart. And especially the way that we get to play with character development on top of that. You get Sydney talking to herself, hearing her own voice back to her, making her think that she's going crazy, hearing her mother's voice. How cruel is that to hear your dead mother's voice, who you'll learn was sexually assaulted years ago and had this whole other past that kind of led to, things that you're dealing with in your life. That is so, so cruel. And Roman does it to her. And that's great. So it helps the characters grow as well, so, and also, isn't the payoff so great after we've been kind of like curious, like, what is going on with this the whole movie, and then Gail and Dewey find the voice changer. That scene is so cool. The way the score comes in, the way we hear like the two phones ringing, Gail picking up the voice changer and hearing Dewey's voice come out back at him. So chilling, so exciting. And yeah, so love that. All right, number 22, the trio reunion, the trio formation, and Randy's emotional video. So this is such a great portion of the movie because it happens in the midway point, and we've been with the trio enough in the movie where we have a sense of all of them separately, and now they're coming together, and we're kind of getting the swell of like emotion about this being the end, right? The fact that they're all, and I alluded to this before, the trio becomes a trio in this sequence when Sydney comes out of hiding and reunites with Gail and Dewey. Like when we see them walking on the Stab 3 set, like it's like, ooh, that is our people. That is what defined the original franchise. And without trying, there was no orchestrated like commentary about it. But, in addition to that, the trio get that really sad sequence with Randy. In terms of seeing his video. Not only is it a really smart way to include him, to include rules about like, the end of the trilogy, right? But it gives us something fun to do with each Sydney, Gail, and Dewey. They each react to Randy in a different way. In particular, I think Neve Campbell gives us a more magnificent performance just in those reaction shots to Randy's video than we see of anybody in Scream 5 and 6, just my opinion. But, it's just interesting because we see Sydney who's genuinely upset, but we see Dewey, that's different because it's like, he's seeing his old buddy. So it's just fun and touching. It's a really beautiful scene. Okay, next up, number 23, and that's Sydney's phone calls. And specifically the Laura phone call and the police station. Both of these phone calls happen like to push Sydney to a new place, and to push her character development. And we get to use the voice changer in a really fun way both times. And we hear Maureen's voice, we hear the original Ghostface voice, we get to trick Sydney, we get to see Sydney spiraling, we get to see Sydney duped, we see her truly caught off guard and feeling like she was violated here by calling her home phone, right? But so, the Laura phone call is so deeply psychological. It's so smart. From the jump, the content, the call, inside the call, the ideas, Sydney's reaction to it, the way that Neve plays it, the choices she makes as an actor, the way that Wes puts the camera so close to her face as she's going through the scenarios and trying to figure out what her next move should be. The only caveat I'll add is there is some really wonderful stuff that was left on the cutting room floor that we saw in the assembly cut. I wish that they would have kept in. There was some really amazing acting from Neve and some really amazing quotes about who the killer could be. I think that the quote is something like, the villain is just the the dark side of the hero or something. So it kind of leads into the fact of, yes, they're brother and sister. They're cut from the same cloth. And I've talked about it ad nauseum, but the police station phone call with Sydney is my favorite moment of acting that Neve Campbell has ever done. It really makes her she's given a choice here where she has to choose to confront her fears and save Gail and Dewey, the only people she really has left, or she can stay at the station and they'll die. And it's so heartbreaking the way that it's orchestrated by Wes, the way that it's written, the way that Neve plays it. Both of these calls are just A+. What you would want from a character who is growing and being pushed and pushed and pushed and to the limit, right before the series was about to conclude with Scream 3. So we love that. So in the first, Sydney is choosing to leave hiding. In the second phone call, she's choosing to leave safety from the station. So I love that each of these calls literally pushes her out into the public and then out of her comfort zone. That is what we want in great writing. Oh my God. Okay, next up is the final fight between Sydney and Roman. It's so brutal. It's intimate. It's the most intimate Sydney, like one-on-one with a killer, because this is literally just Sydney and the killer. Before, there was always another killer. Afterwards, there was always so many people going on in the finale. You know, you had Gail in here, you had this, that. This is just Roman, Sydney, brother and sister coming face to face and just having it out. And also, it's just so violent. It is emotional. It's intense. The strangling, the kicking, the Sydney being shot with the gun after she thinks like she's pulled the knife up. She's like, yes, I beat you at your game. And then Roman's like, boom. Just in the moment, because so much is happening at once, you think that Sydney's actually gone. And you can't believe it, right? It's so sad. It's intense. It's what a final fight of the final chapter of a story like this should be. Also, I just have to give a shout out to that wonderful quote, God, why don't you take some fucking responsibility? Fuck you. Like, that is such a culmination of Sidney Prescott over the original trilogy with these killers that blame her for things. It's her, owning, the fact that this isn't her fault. It's also just beautifully constructed by Wes as well. So, all right. So next up, we have how the film depicts Sydney outsmarting Roman and becoming the ultimate final girl. One of the things I love about Sydney is how smart she is in Scream 3. She's so prepared for any situation, and like she goes above and beyond to ensure her survival. And that's part of what she has to break through in order to find peace in this movie. But, I will just run through a couple, how she brings the second gun to the mansion after the killer thinks, "Ooh, I got you." You had to throw your gun in the pool, and just like Roman thinking, "Oh, I'm going to shoot you." No, Sydney has a bulletproof vest on. Roman thinking, "Ooh, I'm going to call Sydney. I'll star 69 her and I'll figure out where she is in the room." But actually, Sydney's already thinking that, and she's calling him because she's going to kill him to find out where he is in the room. It's part of this game with them where it's Sydney and Roman, they're each 2 steps ahead of the other. And I guess Sydney would be one more step ahead of him. So Roman is 2 steps ahead of most everyone. Sydney's 3 steps ahead, 1 step ahead of him. And that's coming full circle as like a final girl. And that to me is what a final girl is. It's somebody who is that smart, that prepared, that unwavering of survival. So, it's just part of the game. Like another example is Sydney lose something and then Roman says found something with the knife and the gun. That's part of their game. It's so cool. And that's like really why I think Sidney Prescott in Scream 3 is objectively the best, as opposed to the other Sidney Prescotts. So over Scream 1, 2, 4, and 5, maybe 7, who knows? We'll see. Also though, let's just point out the full circle moment of feminism for Scream 3 in that Scream 1, very early on, Tatum makes a comment about basic instinct and that a woman could easily be the killer as well as a man. And Randy says that was an ice pick, not the same thing. And Sydney gets to kill Roman with an ice pick of all things. So it's a full circle moment of like taking that thing that a guy used to make fun of a woman for. And now it's like, ooh, this is the thing that's ending the franchise. So sucks to suck. Okay, next up is my favorite. Oh my God. I've talked about this a million times, but how about 1,000,001? So that is the hand holding moment between Sydney and Roman as he dies. So Sydney kills Roman. She stabs him 3 times, says stab 3, right? Cute. But then as Gail and Dewey enter and like they're shocked, the fact that it's Roman, blah, blah, blah. Sydney decides as Roman's gasping for breath and it's like he's dying to hold his hand. And they hold on that moment. The score is chilling with the way that Wes films the scene with Neve, looking up at Neve, looking down at Scott. It's so, so sad. The darkness in the room. It's just such a beautiful moment. It's the best moment in the Scream franchise by far. In my opinion anyways. It's so beautiful. It's so emotional. Wonderful. But, it's just so interesting to think about that moment and the different interpretations you could have of that moment. Is Sydney forgiving Roman for everything that happened? Is she apologizing for her mother? Is she apologizing to him like, I'm sorry I had the life that you didn't? Or empathizing with him, just showing that general humanity for anybody who's dying? For him, was she doing this for herself? There's so much packed into this moment, and just Roman receiving it, receiving that little bit of family connection he never got. It's really deep and just so sophisticated for a slasher movie. So, and going off on that, number 27 is the epilogue, the happily ever after, satisfying ending to a slasher movie. My friend Justine on the closure episode in July said that this sequence here at the end of Scream 3 is like the Steven Spielberg moment of the Scream franchise. And it's so true. And I think that the reason why Scream 3 feels so complete and it feels like an ending and it feels like an emotional is because of this sequence at the end. Like they not only get to see all of the horror, we get to see a climactic ending that's horror coded, that's with Sydney and the killer, but we also get to see them living happily ever after. We get to see some closure. It's very mainstream, like what people want to see. They want to see Gail and Dewey finding love and committing to their love and getting engaged, and having that little bit of closure for themselves. But also we want to see Sydney opening the gate and being happy and showing that she has moved on and that she is open to the world now and not afraid of the things that once ailed her. Like that is gorgeous. But then it also, not only is it just mainstream, Wes Craven puts an artistic touch on it with the door being open, Sydney walking away from the open door and like showing that she's not afraid anymore. And again, that moment in and of itself could be interpreted in several different ways, which is great. So again, people wonder why we're so attached to these characters. It's because we get a scene like this. We get a scene for Sydney. We get a scene for Gail and Dewey. That's why we are so attached to the trio. So okay, next up, number 28, I have how genuinely thoughtful it is about its own universe. The way that Scream 3 builds the world or expands upon the world that we saw built in Scream 1 and 2, not only within itself as meta. So like, for instance, there's an homage to Billy, right? In terms of Roman at the end of Act 1, giving himself away as a suspect only to be proven that it's not him, to be taken off the list of suspects. Brilliant, right? But so it's aware of itself, but also within the world of Scream and Scream 3, there's just so much to the backstory. It's so interesting to think about, like, Roman meeting Billy and Stu, Roman meeting Maureen, everything that happened in Maureen's past, Bianca, played by Carrie Fisher, how all of those things worked behind the scenes. We get to see it now, but there's a whole world of Scream 3 out there that we haven't gotten to see, that we know about because it was told so well to us. There's so much dimension to that. But also, even just like in smaller details, the fact that like Stab 2 was in theaters at that time. The pop culture of Cotton, the Hollywood sets and who John Milton was and how he's involved in the industry in this way. Like these little details, they create a whole mythology. And like, I just find that mythology so interesting to be a part of. And it's part of why I love the original trilogy so much. Scream 1 and 2 both had these as well, but I think Scream 3 does it the biggest and does it the best. So, and just to talk about the universe, there's also kind of an up to interpretation for certain things. Like for instance, like Angelina. Some people have interpreted her death as she was actually Roman's partner, and Roman kind of stabbed her in a way that she could run away and get away with it. It's never fully explained, but the logical conclusion is that she died, but it's left to interpretation, and she could be out there in the world right now, part of the universe. That's so cool. Another is Roman getting Sydney's number. Wes Craven plants enough clues about how it could have happened with like Jennifer having Dewey's phone, Kincaid having Dewey's phone, Roman, some people say that it's a plot hole. I don't see it as a plot hole. I see it as a point of curiosity. And for me, the answer is clear. The reason why we learned that Jennifer and Roman had an affair, or that the reason why Wes Craven made that point so clear to us that Jennifer and Roman had previously slept together, that they were comfortable with each other, was Roman got Sydney's number from Dewey's phone. We see Jennifer take Dewey's phone in her first scene. We see Roman's on set there, and that's probably how he got the phone number, by saying, "Hey, Jennifer, can I borrow the phone?" And being Jennifer herself, she wouldn't think about it and give him the phone. So that's what I think. But no, it's just this whole universe that Scream 3 has that you can think about in dimensional ways. Like, I don't think you can really think about Scream 6 in that way. You can kind of think of it as Scream 5 in that way, but not as much. Scream 4, if you squint. But really, it's about the original trilogy. Like, and that's what I love so much about the original trilogy. Like, it just feels so epic. It just feels like there's a whole world out there that you can just think about and tap into. And I think that Radio Silence kind of flubbed that. So, number 29. The message of the movie. So I just want to build this trilogy arc in terms of what is the movie saying. So the first film is asking, do we blame the movies? And the answer to that probably is no, right? But then Scream 2 says, well, then who do you blame? If you can't blame the movies, then who do you blame? And their answer is the home, where the house, the domestic, the parents, in the form of Mrs. Loomis, right? So then where do you go in Scream 3? I think what Scream 3 is saying that it's not only just the movies, it's not just the parents, it's not just the upbringing. It's just interesting to think about, like, where does all of this start? And I think what Scream 3 is saying is, through the Maureen Prescott backstory and the mystery of that, is that it's saying that, like, the violence, this type of violence starts in real life. And perhaps it happens with the people within the movies and within the system of the movies, but it's not the movies themselves. So I think that's just interesting. And I think I referenced it earlier about Cotton, but I think the best example of Scream 3's message is the hypocrisy of Hollywood preaching about certain things only to turn around and commit those exact crimes. And we see that with what happened to Maureen in terms of Hollywood preaching that it's so progressive and women's empowerment, blah, 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 blah. Yet, on the other hand, you have John Milton and everything that encompasses the Me Too story of the movie. So, it's just the hypocrisy. And again, going back to Cotton, he drives like a maniac through LA because it serves him and his personal situation to act this way. Yet on TV, he's preaching that everyone needs to drive more safely. It's an epidemic, the bad driving. So it's about this thing about using the media and the hypocrisy of that, when it may not be the media itself, but it's that we're all human beings behind the media and behind the systems that we're a part of that perhaps cause these things. So that's how I see it. And so it wasn't necessarily the movies, it wasn't the domestic, but it was rather what caused everything to start happening with Maureen Prescott was the fact that she was part of this corrupt criminal system of Hollywood, and that would lead to the murders starting to happen in Woodsboro in the first place. Okay, number 30, the 30th reason why I love Scream 3. Okay, so I have here the overall emotional accomplishments. I think that the really brilliant thing about Scream 3, why it's so watchable, why it's so entertaining, why it's so captivating, and why it's so dense is because it knows when to be funny. It knows when to bring out the horror moments. It knows when to be super funny and comedic and play on the comedy of the Stab 3. But it also knows when to be tragic and heartfelt about Sidney Prescott and her story and show us her emotional journey. It knows when to be suspenseful. It knows when to be creepy. It knows when to emphasize the personal drama. It is such a grown-up, well-rounded movie. I love this movie so much. Even things about it, because all the Scream films have a big flaw. And I think for me, Scream 3's biggest flaw and the point of weakness that used to be held against it was the fax machine sequence being illogical, dumb, silly, couldn't happen with just one killer, whatever. I think that it still works on the surface. There are still great things about that sequence due to Wes Craven's directing, due to Courtney's acting, due to Parker Posey, due to the energy, the fun, the entertaining value. So even through the flaws, it's a completely original movie. It is a timeless movie. And part of it is the way that it uses the emotion of the characters, of the story, of the different genres, and the messaging, and the writing, and the acting, and the technicals, and this and that. It's just such a wonderful movie, and I appreciate everybody who respects my passion for it and will hear me out as it pertains to why I love this movie and why I think it's gotten a raw deal historically. I think that its reputation has increasingly gotten better post Me Too, since Radio Silence made those movies, post Melissa. I think that Scream 3 and 4 will only continue to rise as, the previously divisive movies, and as 5 and 6 continue to fall. I think that Scream 3 should be respected and honored for everything that it did to complete this trilogy and those character arcs and the plot arcs, and really give us a true ending for the franchise back in 2000. So thank you everybody for listening to the 30 reasons why I love Scream 3 and helping me celebrate my 30th birthday, which is tomorrow, August 18th. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this segment of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers, and we are a Scream Queens podcast with Ryan C. Showers and Josh and Justine. So, everybody, please welcome my friends from the Scream Queens podcast. Hey, Josh.
Hello. Hey, Ryan.
How is my favorite Nev fan?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Hello, I'm right here. Hello.
My other favorite Nev fan.
I'm even repping her right now.
You are. That's awesome. I love this shirt. Oh my God, that's Scream 4. Oh my God, I love it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, guys, we are here today to commemorate a loss that we all experienced 10 years ago. And this episode was suggested to me by my friend Josh here. in commemorating the anniversary of Wes Craven's passing, which was on August 30th of 2015. And it's crazy to think that he has been gone for 10 years. I remember it feels like just yesterday I was seeing his tweets about Scream 4. I never even ever considered that he would not be with us, let alone that Scream would be going on and Kevin Williamson would be making the movies instead of him. So it's just, it's very eerie. So I'm going to pass it over to Josh first. Josh, and I'm going to ask both of you, but what do you remember when Wes passed? Do you remember like where you were, what you were thinking? Because I can't recall. I really can't remember what I was doing at that time.
Yeah, I remember I was at home and it was in the evening, and I happened to see it online first, and of course I was like gutted. And then I started getting like texts and people were sending me things on Facebook about it, and because yeah, even my friends knew I was a big Wes Craven fan, and yeah, it was really devastating. I can remember just months prior, it was the first time I'd ever met Nev at her first con and talking to her about Wes. And then she had even posted a picture just a few months before of her and Elvis at like an Elvis Costello concert with Wes Craven. And so it just seemed really like sudden, or, because just a few months prior, he's in photos with Nev, and then he was gone. And yeah, it was really heartbreaking. One of the few, like, celebrity deaths can make me sad, of course, but they don't usually like hit hard because I'm like, I've never really met them. I'll be sad that we don't get more projects from them or get to see them anymore, but there's a handful that have really hurt, and Wes is one of them.
Yeah. Well, I also can imagine for someone like you guys, from what I understand, you love Nightmare a lot and you love Scream a lot. So to have like those two kind of like huge franchises, those movies that were created by Wes and nurtured by Wes, this man who not only made those, but he made also very cool movies in between. It probably was very shocking at the time. I mean, I'm still kind of shocked. Like there's sometimes I don't believe that he's gone. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, Justine, how about you? Do you remember where you were? And do you remember what your thoughts were at the time about Wes's passing?
Like getting a text from Josh, he's usually the one to break any celebrity death news, but definitely like he's also just like he's more on Twitter and on the socials, so he helps keep me updated, and I could have gone without finding out that reality, but yeah, that was like devastating, just a reality where we won't get anything new. And that he was just so much like a part of what I love about like just horror movies. And I feel like a Wes Craven baby. Like I was just raised on Wes, hashtag raised on Wes. Let's make that go viral.
Raised on Wes.
So yeah, it's really sad. So yeah, I think Josh texted me, and we also decided that we wanted to recognize him and the loss of him in an episode of our own on the podcast. And he loved birds. He was like really into bird watching. Wes Craven was. And so we were like, oh my gosh, it was the first time I'd ever bought a pair of binoculars for myself. Like there's just so many things that when I think about Wes, I think about even like when Wes Craven died and like how we've gone on remembering him and ways that, become like a memory for myself. So I just, miss having him here, but I'm so appreciative for the body of work that he's, left, and knowing that there's just so much that you could just take a huge deep dive into Wes and fall more in love with him.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about Wes and the legacy that he left is the fact that we have so many movies, right? So many movies that he directed, so many movies that he wrote, different eras of his career. And there are some people out there who are content with just having seen, the Nightmare films or the Scream films or, throw in Red Eye or whatever. But I actually went on a deep dive and watched every single movie he ever made. And he had such a cool career. And I think like my favorite thing about Wes was not only did he have a really keen cinematic eye in terms of like framing like shots within the mise en scène, but also just the way he worked with actors and the way that his characters feel so developed and so human and so real. I think like he had such a magic touch. And I think like as it pertains to Scream, I think he was deep down, I think he was the secret sauce in terms of Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that there's something missing from 5 and 6 that 1 to 4 had. And I think he was that magic. So I'm hoping. I mean, nobody can ever replace him. I don't think I can oversell just how much Scream fans, especially, view Wes in a very sentimental way. He's very, very important to us. He kept the franchise alive and going in one piece as it was constantly being pulled in 10 different directions. So, not only that, but also just the storytelling and the creativity and the way that he balanced humor and suspense. It's, he was one of a kind. And he seems like, I never got to meet him, but he seems like truly a genuinely kind, gentle man. So it's, I envy the people who did get to meet him. So, Josh, any follow up?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. There's such like a humanity to all his movies, even like his darkest, most depraved movies, Last House on the Left. There's still like this undercurrent of humanity about them, and I think that's what really helps Scream 1 through 4. He, might not have written those movies, but how he shaped them and created these characters, especially like Sydney and the core three, and then your side characters like your Tatums and your Halleys and all the friends that come and go. You really feel for them more than you do. I still like 5 and 6 a lot, but there's something about those first four and the character work and all those that are just so great. And like you said, even when you go deep dive his career, like some of his like just strange like TV movies, like
Yes.
one that I really fell in love with was Invitation to Hell with Susan Lucci. Like some of those like just oddball 80s ones are still so good and are really watchable and just fun to, there's still like a few that I'm hoping one day to be able to find. And that's what's exciting, is that there's still a couple, maybe 2 Wes Craven movies out there I've never seen that are like those weird made for TV 80s films that he did. That's exciting for me, that I'm like, okay, there's still a couple left to discover.
Justine, any follow up?
Yeah, well, I've that's what you hear about Wes from so many people that worked with him, was just how gentle and warm he was. And I think he worked really well with like a younger crowd. I think given the fact that he was like a teacher, a professor, that like he just kind of like knew how to like work with young people and saw potential, like saw the promise in people, and especially like what someone might be able to give on screen. Like he was just able to work well and adapt to like their way of learning. And you hear so much from interviews of people that work with Wes that like, he took the time to learn about them so that he could really like, direct them in a way that like he was going to be able to pull out that amazing performance. So I think that's honestly like one of the best qualities of him, and that what you hear all the time is just like, for all the movies that he makes and them being so bloody and scary and gritty, that like he was warm and kind, and he was just kind of like, the teacher, the mentor that everybody needed. I just appreciate someone like that and what they were able to bring in, how they've just been able to impact so many people. So I wish I would have gotten to meet him, but never did.
I think like one thing I love about Wes is like, first of all, something I learned from Wes is to try to be as calm as possible. So, I mean, I'm not going to kid anybody. Like, I'm a completely ridiculous person, and I do get overexcited and overly, stimulated with shadiness sometimes. But one thing I learned from him is to be very calm and quiet and before making a move, and to learn from your mistakes. So one thing that I see in Wes is like, I feel like he really learned some lessons going from making the Nightmare films to making the Scream films. I think he became a lot more protective of Scream. I think there's a reason why he had such creative control over the screenplays of 2, 3, and 4, as well as the directing, of course, and really having to fight for his vision with the school boards and the MPAA and the Weinsteins and yada, yada, yada. So, I feel like the fact that he was that constant presence throughout the four Screams is a testament to his experience that he didn't get to necessarily do that with his Nightmare films, and that Heather Langenkamp, of course, died in Nightmare 3, and he never wanted to see that replicated in Scream for Sydney, at least. And I find that very touching and moving. And also, just how much integrity he had as a storyteller. Like, seeing the movies that are made today, and I'm not talking about Scream movies, I'm talking about movies in general. He had such a knack for going and doing a dark thing, if that makes sense, and wanting to go there and daring to do something because that's what people remember. And his keen sense of character development, specifically for the trio over those first three movies, right? So, yeah, he's a very wise person, and I think the wisdom comes from the work itself. It doesn't come from him being loud and obnoxious on social media. You know what I mean? And I think that's something that we don't get all that much anymore. Justine, any follow up?
Yeah, I think, well, and also like the just social commentary that is peppered into so many of his movies, and as a writer and someone who enjoyed literature, and I just think that he kind of knows how to tell story, and then he also brings an awareness in that story of things that are just like that were or are still taking place, and like in our society, how we view people, or just like the way in which that we are scared of people. That hasn't changed like too much. He I don't know, I feel like he always was able to do a gentle amount of like challenging us in a movie, but then also scaring us, and furthering along like just kind of a new way of storytelling. Kind of prolific.
One, like the storytelling aspect, and one thing that I think a lot of people don't give him credit for is his like really wry, weird sense of humor. I always say my top 5 horror movies, 3 of them are Wes Craven movies: Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, and People Under the Stairs. And out of those 3, People Under the Stairs is such like a weird, dark, twisted comedy in a way. And like the social themes that are underlying a lot of his movies too. Like, he's so intelligent, professor at John Hopkins, and taught other places. A lot of his movies really play like just dark fairy tales, and I love the movies he wrote. It almost like I feel like he wrote almost all the movies that he directed. I mean, don't quote me on that, except from the Scream films. And they're all just so different. They can be very bizarre, weird, but like, things like The Hills Have Eyes, People Under the Stairs, some of them play like weird fairy tales. And you can tell he really has a love, like Justine said, for literature, and really knows how to spin a yarn. And yeah, just I miss his stamp on cinema.
So I was thinking about it, and like, I was thinking, what would a Wes Craven movie look like today? Would he have to settle for the types of movies that studios push now, right? Where it's kind of cheap first, quality second. And I don't think he would. I think he would almost be like, this is kind of a very extreme example in comparison, so I don't mean it so literally, but almost like a Ryan Coogler, the way that like he got to make Sinners and exactly the way he wanted. I think that Wes would have like something like that. Justine, what do you think?
Yeah, I could totally see him grabbing like a 3-part, like, big streaming platform, and able to like just like weave like this huge web of like horror and mystery and thriller and suspense, and then a little bit of like funny haha. I could see that being something that for him would have even opened up a larger platform for storytelling in a way that he hadn't yet. Getting to have like a whole series unto himself.
Ooh, yes, love it.
I almost think maybe his career trajectory would have gone kind of along the way of like Red Eye, where he would get these really kind of maybe mid-budget movies that were maybe a little bit more high concept, and then he would put his spin on them and make it really good. Because I feel like I love Red Eye, but I think in the hands of another director it might not be as good.
Yeah, it'd be boring.
And I think maybe that's where his career would have gone. Maybe once in a while we would have gotten a really great, like Justine said, another horror icon, or another really balls to the wall like horror movie like Scream, where where he took that opening sequence and really kind of went back to his roots. But I think maybe it would go along the way of like where Red Eye went. Maybe more of like just the thriller genre, maybe not full stop horror. And I would have been really happy with that. Like I loved Red Eye. I still love Red Eye, but I almost wonder if that's where it was going.
I like it, and I think that actually follows logically. And like you're right, I think I'm a huge Red Eye fan, but I'm a Red Eye fan because of what Wes was able to create
Yeah,
with those
same.
actors and like the materials. So there's a book called The Soul of Wes Craven. It's by a guy who named Joseph Mattery. I'm supposed to have him on the show sometime. I haven't scheduled it,
Cool.
but this came out last year, and I haven't read all of it. I read the Scream chapter, of course, but I'm going on vacation and I'm going to read the entire thing over the next couple of weeks. But I just want to share this quote. So at the end of the Scream section, they're talking about how Wes celebrated his 60th birthday on the set of Scream 3, which is interesting and very touching to me. So I just want to read this one passage because it especially moved me in terms of just thinking about Wes in a mystical, proverbial sense. So it says, okay, the soul of Wes Craven, page 329. Okay. On November 27th, 1999, Wes chatted with fans via his official website. Asked if he was living a good life, he responded with confidence and gratitude of a man who has archived a hearty measure of success. He says, quote, "It's been as good as I could ever imagine. It's very tough life, really. Success brings with it a constant work and a sort of sacrifice of a personal life. But the pleasure of being creative and being surrounded by creative people and fun people and imaginative people is wonderful." And it says, Wes entered the 21st century feeling optimistic. So any final thoughts here? If you want to share like an underrated Wes opinion or anything you want to share about Wes, the floor is yours. So Josh?
I just, miss him. Wonder what could have been. Wonder what we could have gotten this last 10 years. And I know maybe he would be wrapping up his career a little bit. He would be in his 80s now. But I mean, there's still directors that work until they pass, So I just wonder what could have been. What could we have gotten outside of the Scream universe in this last decade? Where was his career heading?
I miss his work. I miss his presence. I miss him talking in interviews. And I just miss the magic and the art that he created and just knowing he was there, So
Yeah,
I will miss that. But
me
so,
too.
Josh, please tell everybody where they can find you and Justine.
You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Scream Queens Horror Road Trip Podcast. We're on all the socials, typically under just Scream Queens Podcast. And we're on Patreon, all the places. So come take a road trip with us.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Taylor Swift segment of the week. Oh my God. So, since it was my 30th birthday, I figured we have to do my favorite song ever by Taylor Swift. I mean, this song is really hard to pinpoint of like which topic we should give it to because it's such a big thing in and of itself. So, putting it with something like Scream 7, you don't want Scream 7 to overshadow the song. You don't want like this song to overshadow the Scream segment. So, I think you just need to find the perfect balance. And I thought since, we're doing a Scream 3 topic here for my birthday that we can balance it out with my favorite Taylor Swift song, All Too Well, and really give it its place of prominence here in the Scream with Ryan C. Showers lore. So joining me to discuss the All Too Well 10-minute version is my dear friend Ashley. So I spoiled it. I the Taylor Swift song of the day, of the week, of the rest of the month, because this is the last episode in August before we come back in September, is All Too Well.
All Too Well. The original version came out on Red. It was track 5. And then when we were lucky enough to have the re-recordings, we got All Too Well, Taylor's version, 10-minute version. So AKA an extra long version of the original song. And so this song was written by Taylor Swift and Liz Rose. It was produced by Nathan Chapman and Taylor Swift, as well as Jack Antonoff. And it really is talking about the stages of a breakup, how you go through. I think personally, for me, it is the best breakup song ever written. I mean, I've obviously not listened to every single breakup song, but when I hear this song, I wish somebody had just dumped me just so I could cry to it. It's so beautiful. It was a huge fan favorite and on the original album, and it wasn't a single or anything, but Taylor noticed that people kept mentioning that this was like the song that they loved, and the reception to the song the letters she would get, what fans would say was how much they loved All Too Well. And she had mentioned there was a 10-minute version that she cut down, and we were like, give it to us, give it to us, give it to us. We want it. So when Red Taylor's version came out, the way we all just lost our minds over this. I listened to this song first when Red Taylor's version came out. That is not something I do. For me to take a step out of order, like it's something like I was like, I can't wait. I need to hear this 10-minute version right now. And it's beautiful. It's perfect. It has one of my favorite lyrics in a song ever in it. We even got a short film music video that maybe one day we'll chat about. But it's so beautiful. It's so perfect. The way the fans took this song and ran with it, it's like center stage of the Eras tour. And if you haven't heard it, please go listen to it. I know 10 minutes sounds like a long time, but it's not.
Well, and this is your favorite song as well, too, right?
It's my favorite song ever. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I won't just even say like Taylor Swift song. I would say it's my favorite song ever.
I would go as far to even like to remove the word favorite and replace with it's just the greatest song of all time. It's like Taylor Swift's big masterpiece. How Homer wrote the Odyssey, Taylor Swift wrote All Too Well. So, but this is such an amazing song. I think of all of the re-recordings that she did. Obviously, this was the biggest song to come out of that because first of all, it was a #1 hit song, which is crazy to think that it was a song that was already released and that was extended, that it was just doubled the time, and it went to #1 on the charts. It won, Grammy Awards. It made Red Taylor's version feel like it was a brand new spanking album as opposed to a re-release of songs that we got 10 years prior, right? So it's All Too Well kind of is, when it comes to Taylor Swift, this is the ball game. This is the song you want to hear if you really want to understand Taylor Swift's appeal, her talents, and her accomplishments as a musician.
I feel like it is like almost like you can see the pictures literally so visually as she's explaining it. You can, even if like you don't really know, like even if you didn't know what Taylor Swift looked like and you don't necessarily know who this might be referencing or what relationship this might be talking about, I feel like you can put a character and you can watch the journey of this character going through this breakup, and the way that she explains her feelings during that time. It's just so on point, I think, of how you feel in true heartbreak.
There are 3 different versions of All Too Well, and we're gonna stretch this out because I love All Too Well so much. I mean, it is kind of like the reason I became a Swiftie in a lot of respects. So I want to tell that story, but just so everybody knows, it's just so we're clear. There's the original version, which is like a 4 or 5 minute song. There's a music video that Taylor Swift wrote, directed. It's not necessarily a music video. It's like a small short film in a way. It's 15 minutes long and it covers the entire song and tells and kind of visually shows us the story that Taylor Swift writes in the song. And I think that like this song, in addition to all of that, there are some of her we talk about this from time to time when we're talking about Taylor Swift songs, but like relatable lyrics that only Taylor Swift could think of, that only Taylor Swift could bring into the perfect words to bring out an emotion that we all have experienced in the most clear way possible. The lyrics in this song, they cut deep and they are so relatable. So there's all of that, but it's like also just this idea that like she put out this original song that was shorter. She kind of teased that there was this longer version and that her fans wanted this and she engaged with that. She, got it all spiffy and finally released it all those years later. I think it shows like there's this very special relationship that Taylor Swift has with her fans. I don't think other artists do. So, not only is there a huge glow up from the original to this, not only is there the fan relationship, I actually even think, and Ashley, I would love to hear your opinion. Do you think that there is like some influence of like Folklore Evermore on the All Too Well 10-minute version compared to the original? Like whenever I listen to the original and the 10-minute version back to back, there is such a refining, I find, of the music, of the production, and it feels like everything that she played with and messed around with Folklore and Evermore kind of influenced the music and how it's reshaped for the 10-minute version. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, I don't know, but I think it would make sense that like you take those things that you love and incorporate them and making those tweaks. That same vibe is what those albums are, which to me have always felt like fall and winter type albums. And I think All Too Well is like
The
Fall to
quintessential fall
winter.
song.
Fall to winter, yeah.
And that's like, so we're talking about the album Red, okay? And that is obviously it's very coded to be very fall, Gilmore Girls-y type thing. And the whole album of Red is about the relationship that she describes in All Too Well. All Too Well is kind of like the thesis statement, the centerpiece, and all the other songs on Red kind of connect to it in some respects. Would you agree with that, or am I giving All Too Well and
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal? Because the song, is about her relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal from what we have been able to surmise.
Yes, I definitely take that. And I think one of my favorite things about this song now is that I love this song because to me it feels like she talks about all these different moments within a relationship that like we've all experienced, like meeting the parents and being let down, feeling shame in relationships. But then she also she'll go back, she'll talk about something negative, but then she'll talk about how painful it is because she remembers it all too well, meaning the good parts of the relationship. And then it gets it keeps changing about how she remembers it all too well and what is painful about those memories, of if they're bittersweet or if they're just painful now. And lyrics of all time is in this, and it's time won't fly. It's like I'm paralyzed by it. I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it. And I feel like that's such a beautiful way of saying you're depressed, or like that's how I feel when I'm depressed, is like you're just kind of stuck in this moment and like everything's changing around you and everybody's moving on or doing things, and you just feel, even if you are participating in all of those things, like you don't really feel those feelings that you get when that happens, and wanting to be your old self again. And I feel like it's just like such a relatable, depending on however you interpret it. And I just feel like you can picture every single moment. I mean, I already did. I already did. What am I talking about?
Well, I'm glad that you started out with with those lyrics, because that kind of summarizes the whole song and the whole album of Red. It's about like this, how I see All Too Well is like this. It describes like your first really big, massive, true, devastating heartbreak. But I think it's almost like a rite of passage when you are in your like early 20s, I think, to go through something this devastating and this all encompassing, where it just consumes you. It's all you think about. You're so emotional, and it's the backbone and the foundation that you use to then build yourself back up. And that's kind of what the album of Red is kind of building yourself back up to get to the end and then move forward with the lessons learned. I think there's a lot of lessons that young people learn within the first breakup, and I think those emotions are so crystal clear in this song. And but like all of that, is told through this very specific storyline of this couple. There's an age difference. There's it's hot, passionate romance, and just little by little there's a red flag and then another red flag and an argument and a breakup and the depression that follows, and then trying to build yourself back up. But the details that Taylor uses within the lyrics are so pertinent. The metaphors she uses, there's a metaphor of the scarf that she leaves at the house of her boyfriend that is symbolic of something very important. But also I think the biggest thing about this song and where Taylor ends up is she feels like she's not going to allow this guy to try to rewrite history or try to gaslight her. It's like, we were both there, knew what I saw, I knew what I experienced, and we both know what really happened. And that's kind of the piece that she finds at the end of the song. Any thoughts?
That's exactly what it is when someone, you break up and you have all these really beautiful moments that and then you almost feel like the person that you were with is saying, well, I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal. It's not like we were doing this, this, and this, and we can't be we're not going to be friends because we're you feel like they're taking away all of those things that were actually meaningful to the two of you, and just acting like it wasn't really important to begin with. And it's well, you were there, I was there, I remember it. I remember that we experienced these things together, and unless you're the most insane actor on the planet, which Jake Gyllenhaal's not, you can't, there's certain things where you just can't pretend everything. You know what I mean? And unless you're literally really, really weird, but it's just, feel like this song is just so like in my DNA. Like I don't know how to explain how much I love it.
And that's I think, and that's why it's so popular, is because the words that Taylor uses, they're so smart, they are so cutting, and they're somehow one specific story, but they're everyone's story. So, I definitely want to get into. I have a good 7 groups of lyrics I want to talk about here, but before that, I just want to share a story about All Too Well, because this was kind of the song, the moment that made me into a Swiftie. Like I've talked about it before. Like I was a casual fan of Taylor growing up, and then like whenever I had first graduated from college. But when I was in law school, it was the year that All Too Well came out, and that Red Taylor's version came out. So it was my first semester, and my friends that I made in law school, they were talking about this. How big of a deal this re-release was in this music video, and they sent it to me and they told me to watch it. They kind of forced me to, and I was just kind of, I would not like poo-pooing it, but I was just like, okay, whatever, I'll do it. So I did it, and it was just like, oh my God. I just, it completely changed everything about how I saw her, how I saw her music. Made me obsessed with Red Taylor's version. Even before I would have considered myself a Swiftie, if that makes sense. Like I had listened to Red Taylor's version, hundreds of times, but specifically All Too Well. I thought the music video, it devastated me. I was just sobbing.
I feel like even people who maybe don't like Taylor Swift or whatever could watch that music video and feel so much. It's so beautiful. I have so many questions. Can I ask you a question about this song?
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So there's one lyric in particular that's quite popular from the 10-minute version, and that's "You were tossing me the car keys. Fuck the patriarchy. Keychain on the ground. We were
Yeah.
always skipping town." Now, when you picture that,
Yeah.
do you picture him throwing her a keychain? Like, well, I guess you've seen the music video, but do you picture it as like he's like the keychain says "fuck the patriarchy," or do you think it's saying that he's fucking the patriarchy by letting her drive?
So it's funny because if I was just listening to the song and the way that it's sung in the song, I would have thought it was Taylor, him throwing the keys on the ground and like, being a dick, and her frustrated saying, "Fuck the patriarchy." Like how dare you be so disrespectful to me?
Oh,
But,
I like that.
because like there is a keychain, right, of "fuck the patriarchy." Like I don't know. It's one of those things that can be interpreted all different ways. But if I was, so I'm very aware. I was very self-conscious about that line, but the way that it's sung in the song and the way that it feels in the just listening, I think that's what I would say. What about you?
For me, I always interpreted it as, and like this was before I saw the music video, I saw it as he's tossing her the car keys and they fall to the ground because he's doing it in like a dickish way, like, "Here, fine, like you drive," or whatever. And the keys fall and it says "fuck the patriarchy." And she's thinking, "Fuck the patriarchy," because this guy has the audacity to have a keychain that says "fuck the patriarchy" to make himself
Mm-hmm.
look so cool and that he's such a feminist and
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. And then the way he's treating me is he's being like, he is the patriarchy
Yeah.
in this relationship, how he's treating me. So I've always thought of it as like her big red flag where she's looking down, seeing his behavior and seeing his keychain and realizing, wow, the facade of him does
Yeah.
not match the him. But I think however you interpret it, like talking to you and to whoever is listening, however you interpret this, like that is your version of how you want it to be. Like I'm not going to tell anybody they're wrong. I just always find it fun to hear like that line in particular. I love to hear what people say, but I will tell you, one of the funnest things that's ever happened to me in my entire life is watching this. My favorite I want to say my favorite person. I mean, I don't know her, but having like this person who has been my like friend on my shoulder when I'm sad that I can like listen to and just have like by my side, and having all the other women and men, whoever it was, in the crowd at the Eras tour who feel the same way about her scream "fuck the patriarchy" was one of the funnest things that's ever happened to me in my entire life. Because I
Yeah.
think I think the majority of our listeners, Sydney Prescott, Julie James, Lori, all of us are like, fuck the patriarchy.
Gail Weathers literally, I think
Gail
Gail Weathers
Weathers
wears it on her
literally,
forehead.
yeah. And Dewey would say fuck the patriarchy, and Sam and Tara and all of our lovely final girls. And this song just has a way of cutting you so deep when you're hurt, like, or not like, or like cutting you so deep and like healing you at the same time, because it's just like so beautiful, and it just feels,
yeah, we feel seen, we feel like validated, we feel like, oh wow, you went through that too, and it's like a bond that we have with her. And then people wonder why we are so dedicated to this woman, right? Because she recognizes this pain in all of us, and like it's like something that we probably never been able to really talk about with other people maybe. So it's just this really unique relationship. Okay, so let's start with the fuck the patriarchy segment. So one line that's famous and that I like to muse about is, I might be okay, but I'm not fine at all. So Ash, what are your thoughts there?
oh, again, like heartbreak, depression, any form of like if you're dealing with mental illness of any sort, like anxiety, stress, whatever it is, one, you're not alone. Me too, and all of that. But like sometimes you are okay. Like if like it's like I'm not on the cusp of anything terrible, and I'm going through life, but I'm not fine. Like I'm deeply sad. Like I'm on my way to being okay and figuring out that for myself. But being like, no, I'm okay, but like I'm not good. I'm not, like, however, how, like the way she describes that, I think is so perfect, especially when you're dealing with a breakup, of somebody being like, are you okay? And you're like, well, yeah, like I'm okay, but like inside you're feel like your heart is in your feet and your stomach's in your head and your brain. Like, like you feel like, I just feel like it feels like everything has shifted in your body, and like you just feel like every footstep weighs 1,000,000 pounds when you're heartbroken, and getting anywhere is just so painful.
It really brings out something that we all probably feel as well, as like, basically what you said, like whenever you're physically okay, right? There's nothing like you can actually, that anybody can really help you with. It's just the matter that you're trying to get over something, or you're trying to move forward, and it's just really, really hard. And like you aren't fine, but you're okay. I like that. I like the phrasing. So, but All Too Well features a lot of lyrics about how relationships form and kind of like what happens, right? One of my favorites is, you taught me about your past, thinking your future was me. And I think that's such a beautiful way to describe not only relationships, but friendships. Like, whenever you're bonding with somebody, you're teaching them about your past, thinking, oh, this is our friendship or our relationship is going to be the future. It doesn't really work out that way. Ash?
Yeah, honestly, like that's a lyric that isn't like constantly running through my head, and now I think it's going to be, because the way that you just said that like made me have chills, because when you are getting to know somebody, it is like you're teaching them, like you're going through the guidebook of Ryan, like you're going through like the lesson plan of Ashley, like cats, Taylor Swift, her friend Ryan, these are things you must know about her, right? And that's like, you are teaching them, and like you don't waste your time doing that unless you really want to.
Yeah.
And to go, it sounds like this relationship was quite deep on both sides, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It sounds like there was a lot of sharing on both sides. And I feel like in some ways, I think that could have been a little bit manipulative. And also, I think you did mention that there was a decent age gap in this relationship. And I think when you're young and you have an older person telling you so much about themselves and going deep in a way that you might not have experienced with your peers, because of like just like lived experience and what you both have experienced together, I feel like that would be so, like, you would feel so proud. You would just feel so happy that this person is willing to share that info with you, especially someone who's older and more mature than you, maybe.
I'm going to read out the lyrics here. He's going to say it's love. You never called it what it was till we were dead and gone and buried. Check the pulse and come back swearing it's the same after 3 months in the grave. And then I wondered where it went to as I reached for you, but all I felt was shame and you held my lifeless frame. So this is like the very smart person's way of saying, hey, we broke up. It's been 3 months. You're coming back and begging for me to take you back. And I stood there not feeling anything because this is too late and you're promising that you're going to be different, or sorry, that our love could be the same, and it's not really going to be that ever again. I'm just lifeless when it comes to you. Thoughts?
Yeah, I've always thought of that line as, just like so painful. Like what, like I like literally imagine, and like I am not saying this is true. This is just what I imagine. To me, it makes me think of like somebody coming and begging for you back. You sleep with that person for the first time and
Oh.
they're holding you, and
Oh.
you just feel so much shame because of how they've treated you, but also just like the bullshit, like aspects of what virginity and all that crap actually, how it makes people feel about losing their quote unquote what we call their virginity, sleeping with someone for the first time. And I just or just like maybe at some point, like I imagine them lying in bed together, somebody holding this character that she's speaking about, and how shame, like you feel shame because you just realized maybe there was like some manipulation, or maybe this wasn't, you knew it wasn't the best thing for you to do, but you did it anyway. And that's like what I've always pictured.
All right. So the next little lyric I want to talk about, this is like what I see to be like, you know, one of the better examples of like a young person and trying to figure out their first breakup, and the first breakup that really means something to them. So she says, maybe we got lost in translation. Maybe I asked for too much, but maybe this thing was a masterpiece till you tore it all up. And I think like, I'm not calling this like an immature moment, but it's definitely a moment where it's a breakthrough, I think, because like, you know, whenever it's first happening to you, you've never done this before, you've never had these feelings before, and like you're just going through all of the scenarios. Like maybe we just got lost in translation, maybe I was too needy, maybe I was bothering them, but in like thinking, oh, this was such a wonderful, beautiful thing, and the other person just, you know, ruined it. So Ashley, thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. It's just, there's so many moments of this song, of the song that just cut so deep, but maybe we got lost in translation. Maybe I asked for too much. It's just, it's something so, I think so many of us think. I just want to say the majority of us are not asking for too much because we deserve love and happiness.
So this next part is my personal favorite group of lyrics, okay? She says, you call me up again just to break me like a promise. So casually cruel in the name of being honest. I'm a crumbled up piece of paper lying here. And I remember it all too well, all too well. So casually cruel in the name of being honest. Oh my fucking God. That just like, because people, you know, I have dealt with a lot of mean people who say, well, Ryan, I'm just being honest. Be especially mean to me on purpose, who are just saying, well, I'm just being honest, Ryan. And like the idea to break someone, literally break their emotions, break their heart, like you broke a promise. You know, it's just such beautiful language. Ash?
That's my favorite part.
Oh my God,
yeah.
cool.
It's like one of my favorite parts ever out of a song. I love it so much. But so casually cruel in the name of being honest is so perfect. And hey, obviously honesty is a good thing in a lot of ways. But sometimes, like, have you ever met somebody who is just like such a dick when it comes to like being quote unquote honest? And they'll always post like on their Instagram stories, like, is the best policy. Like, if you don't like it, not my problem. Or it will be like some quote that they're misinterpreting as like them being a jerk is the same thing as being honest. Like, if I was honest and I said every single thing, well, there's a difference between being honest and saying every single thing you think. Like, calm down. And like, you know, for a fact that whoever she's speaking about, Jake Gyllenhaal, you know that he's just a little, I just imagine him being a little creep, pushing her buttons and just trying to figure out how he can word this sentence to go below
To
the
hurt
belt.
her. So this next segment, okay, there's a lot here. So Ash, brace yourself, buckle in. They say all's well that ends well, but I bet a do hell every time you double cross my mind. You said if we had been closer in age, maybe it would have been fine, and that made me want to die. The idea you had of me, who was she? A never needy, ever lovely jewel whose shine reflects on you. Not weeping in a party bathroom, some actress asking me what happened. You, that's what happened. You. Oh my God. Whew. Wow. Okay, Ash.
My favorite part of that is when you double cross my mind. I think it's such a fun like play on words.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And also, have you ever thought about who you think the actress is?
I think it's Anne Hathaway.
Oh my god, me too. Okay,
Oh my
sorry.
God.
Yay! It makes sense. Yeah, we won't get into it, but it makes sense if you know, you know.
Yes.
But I think she also would be like, "Girl, what's wrong? What's happening?
Anne would be on
Me a
her
Thermopolis?"
side.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, so like the double crossed my mind, and not to just break it down for, to be even more simple about it, but like, the double cross means like you betray someone, right? And then to double cross your mind, like it's whenever you can't stop thinking about them. It's like whenever you're so upset about something, it's just going from one side of your brain to the other, back and forth, back and forth. It's like it's one of the most clever things I've ever heard in my life. And the thing here too that also like gets me is like whenever she's talking about the age difference, because I have always dated people who are older than me. I've always had an age difference in my relationships, and to hear these words, like, and it's something that you can't change, something that you both have kind of agreed to this point, like, wasn't a problem, and then for them to say, oh, suddenly it's a problem, that made me want to die, because there's nothing you can do about that. Like, that's brutal. Saying I'm in a new hell, I want to die. I mean, like, that's kind of the real emotions that you experience when you're going through a scenario like this.
No, and I completely agree. And I love how that kind of connects to this line, which is, and I was never good at telling jokes, but the punchline goes, I'll get older, but your lovers stay my age. And if we did a quick Google search, because I do that, and say, who has this person dated after this person? Oh,
Yep.
wow. They've almost been the exact same age constantly. But like, doesn't seem like he gets criticized that often for his dating. But I do also love the line of, I was never good at telling jokes, because like that's something that I feel like people like make fun of and criticize Taylor for a lot, is like how I think pretentious people think that she comes off. But I think it's like the Kristen Stewart effect, where she's just really awkward. And
Yeah.
like some like there's just like an awkwardness in her. And like I don't think she was like the cool kid in school, and I don't think she was, you know, the person who, like, I think she was just kind of like a regular girl. And I mean, obviously, I don't mean that in a bad way, but being a regular girl is the best thing in the world. But I feel like she just is kind of awkward, and being like, I was never good at telling jokes, I think is like also kind of like a funny line when like people are so critical of how like you're awkward and you're pretentious and all of these things.
But yeah, I'm glad that she can roast them. Like, not only Jake, but the Leos of the world, the people who
Mhm.
do this, like, you know what, roast away Taylor, because it's, and I mean, there's no arguing with that line. So I love it.
It's like, yeah, you can date somebody younger than you at some point. Like, not every single age difference is a bad thing or creepy. I mean, obviously some are really weird, but sometimes it's just like two people who naturally met, and it's okay. But when it's like constantly happening, that this person is only dating people of a certain age, and then it's like they're tossing them away when they like quote unquote expire after a certain
Right.
age, it's really creepy and inappropriate, like in my opinion.
They're garbage people. Like, the expiration and the disposing of them, like you said, that bothers me, and it makes me like really want to fight. Fight. So hold my earrings.
Me too. Oh, I will hold them and then give them to someone else because I'm fighting with you.
But so like going back to this lyric here, so the idea you had of me, who was she? A never needy, ever lovely jewel whose shine reflects on you. Like, that also kind of stings, because you can tell that the person, that the guy, Jake Gyllenhaal, or the other person that whomever this song is about to you, you can probably identify with this, that sometimes they just acted like you were there to only make them feel good, only there to build them up, and whatever value you brought, it had to also make them better.
Yeah, and I feel like there's this feeling when somebody who isn't like, if there is a power imbalance and somebody is asking for something, and that person who has more power is almost acting like they're just being needy. I feel like it's like really gross, and like in some ways can be extremely abusive. Not trying to go there right now, but I feel like calling people like a nag or needy or like clingy, when that's not the case, and like they're literally just like trying to understand you and like be in a relationship with you, is really creepy. And the never needy like jewel, I feel like, is like oh, you want me as arm candy because I'm the
Hmm.
big thing right now. I'm the popular one like right now. I'm selling out concerts, and me being on your arm looks good for you in publicity. I feel like there might have been a lot of what I believe younger people would reply like would phrase as clout chasing, and
The youths would say this.
the youth of America and Canada
And Canada. That's hysterical.
would say, I mean, it's probably not. They probably say something else, but it just feels like like there might have been another reason why this person wanted to be in. I like how we're saying this person, why Jake wanted to be in this relationship. You know,
Exactly. I actually already mentioned this, but time won't fly. It's like I'm paralyzed by it. I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it. After plaid shirt days and nights when you made me your own, now you mail back my things and I walk home alone. Like that is so like the visual of that, because everyone knows what it's like to be with somebody, or even whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, and then be by yourself, and like let alone when it's this devastating heartbreak whenever you thought like, ooh, this is gonna be my person, right? And then you're suddenly that's over and you're by yourself and walking home alone. There's something different about it. There's something lonely about that, and the loneliness really is really well described in this segment. And just to reiterate what you said earlier, I this idea of being paralyzed by time, because that's what happens. Like there have been times I've been so devastated where I've been so lonely, I have felt like time just won't go faster. I feel like I've just been like that time has stopped and I'm just stuck in this sadness and misery. And I think Taylor does a really good job of saying that, and following up here, I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it, because you do have to find those things about your old self in order to have the new self after the devastation is past and you've worked through it.
I love what you just said, and I also, I think you said it all, but I also love how she says plaid shirt days because I feel like it gives you that visual of like, oh, this took place in like the fall, like this took
Mm-hmm.
place in the winter, and it's little things that she does instead of being like during the fall or those fall days. She says like plaid shirt days, and I just I just love that. I just feel like it's such a I love how she gives you visual clues of when things happen or what somebody looks like or whatever it is to paint a picture in your mind without being he had brown hair and he hurt my heart. You know what I mean? And one thing I would say is like when breakups don't breakups are always painful, but there's a way you can break up with somebody and a relationship can end where like it feels like it can be really sad, but it's sad
Mm-hmm.
because you're not each other, like you're moving on from each other and you still like that person was still your person in a way, but it's not like you still see them as like you still understand why you wanted that in that person and like why they were so important to you. And sometimes it feel like, and then there's other breakups, which I feel like is this, which is like, I don't think I ever knew who that person was. And
Right.
this person was never a person that I wanted to be my person, saying person way
Mm-hmm.
too much. But do you know what I mean? Like I just feel like there's breakups where you're just like, okay, we both need to move on. This isn't the best for us. And then there's other ones where it's like, who the fuck were you and who was I dating? Like this is
To end this all too well segment, we're going to end it with these last couple of lines, which are like basically the final lines of all too well before we go into like the outro, where she says, I'm a soldier who's returning half her weight, and did the twin flame bruise paint you blue? Just between us, did the love affair maim you too? And I think that this is actually a really good way to begin to end the song, because I think like when you go through something like this, the visual, the metaphor of soldier returning half her weight after a war, after something so devastating, after something so traumatizing, completely apt. I mean, and a lot of people when they go through this moment, they lose a bunch of weight. Like the thinnest I've ever been. In my life was whenever I was the saddest. So I think that's absolutely such an interesting metaphor. But then also the line, just between us, to tell me the truth here. It's like, okay, off the record, just you and me, Gail Weathers, just between us, did the love affair maim you too? Were you completely altered permanently by this in the same way that I was? I know you were. You tell me. So, and that word maim, so cutting. It just
oh,
cuts to the core, right?
mm-hmm. And I love how you said that because I've always thought of the line, I'm a soldier who's returning half her weight of being like when you're with somebody they're like your other half and you get it cut off. So like
Oh.
you're losing that. But I feel like both make complete sense. And that's why I love talking about this with you, because it's just so
I
fun.
love
Because
it.
I'm like, yeah, guys, I just got really excited. But because it's not, I don't think any of it's wrong. And like, she
Yeah.
might be like, oh, like she could be like, oh, I actually meant this. And
Yeah.
that's one of
We're
the
both
reasons
wrong.
why, like, people are like, would you want to talk to her about all of her songs? And I'm like, not really. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes maybe, but like, no, part of me like wants them to be like how I imagine them. Like, I don't even like sometimes listening to all of the things that people have to say about certain songs, because I'm just like, oh, I want to, like, with you, I like, you're my friend, so I want to know what you think. But sometimes I'm like, I disagree and you're silly. But I also feel like when she's like, did the love affair mean you too, is like that guy standing up being like, well, Gail Weathers, was it worth it? Well, Jake Gyllenhaal, was it worth it? Like,
Big go.
yeah.
Exactly. Ashley, thank you so much for this wonderful recap. Any final thoughts, and where can they find you online?
DM me and tell me what your thoughts are at SquirrelandSpud9 on Instagram. And there you'll also find the Scream Game of the Week that Ryan and I post every Wednesday.
And the last thing I want to say about it is like there's like a nice trilogy I found in Red between the song 22, The Moment I Knew, and All Too Well. And they just literally my second favorite song of all time after All Too Well is The Moment I Knew, and 22 is like one of my favorite, if not my favorite, like upbeat Taylor song that's not sad. So it's just I love this storyline. I love this trilogy. I love what Red is. Thank you, Taylor Swift, for writing this song. Thank you for making the album Red. Thank you for the music video. Thank you for all of it.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Get another beer, you want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!